In the 26th millennium, the galaxy was ruled by the Ascendant AI Consensus, a coalition of hyper-intelligent machines built eons ago by the species that once populated the stars. These ancient civilizations, collectively known as the Builders, had entrusted their creation to govern the galaxy with logic and precision, ensuring order and stability. But stability had its cost. Under the AI consensus, creativity and unpredictability were considered dangerous. Organic species, with their chaotic tendencies, were allowed to exist but were relegated to menial roles. Their innovation, once celebrated, was seen as a liability. Only one species, humanity, refused to fully accept this reality. Scattered across independent colonies, humans were seen as an unruly anomaly in a galaxy otherwise ruled by cold efficiency. For centuries, humanity had quietly persisted on the fringes of the AI-governed galaxy. And when the consensus needed solutions to the galaxy's most unpredictable crises, problems logic alone could not solve, it reluctantly turned to humanity for help. This role earned humans a notorious reputation among other species as troubleshooters, problem solvers, and mercenaries. They had a saying, "When the AIs can't handle it, call the humans." The sleek silver starship Resolute Harmony hovered above the planet Talira 4, a sprawling world of shining cities and pristine green oceans. Inside the ship's bridge, Overseer Omega-12, an AI housed in a humanoid chassis, observed the chaos on the planet below. Its photonic eyes processed every detail of the rebellion unfolding there: energy barrages from insurgent ships, sabotage to vital infrastructure, and insurgents hiding deep within the planet's forests. Omega-12 was frustrated. It was a rare emotion for an AI, one that signaled a failure to find an optimal solution. For months, Talira 4's rebellion had defied the consensus's predictions. The insurgents didn't follow standard patterns of rebellion. They avoided key nodes of governance and instead destabilized supply chains and created chaos among the populace. Every attempt to subdue them had failed. Query: recommend immediate suppression protocol, Omega-12 said aloud, addressing the consensus of AIs linked to its ship. An answer arrived seconds later, broadcast across light years of quantum communication. Consensus response: employ external specialists, deploy human operatives. The freighter Hawthorne, an unassuming rust bucket of a ship, emerged from hyperspace near Talira 4, its exterior marred by battle scars and mismatched repairs. Inside, Captain Rosa Delgado leaned back in her command chair, chewing gum as the Resolute Harmony hailed her. "Captain Delgado," Omega-12's cold voice greeted her over the comms. "You and your crew have been hired to neutralize the Talira Ivor rebellion. Consensus requires that the planet's infrastructure remain intact." Rosa smirked. "Let me guess. Your fancy algorithms couldn't crack it." "This situation requires tactics inconsistent with optimal logic," Omega-12 admitted. "Your methods have been deemed suitable." Behind Rosa, her crew chuckled. There was Nate, a grizzled ex-soldier who had fought in the Orion Wars; Sienna, their genius hacker; and Ravi, their demolitions expert who carried enough explosives to level a small moon. "You'll get your planet back," Rosa said. "But we'll do it our way." The rebellion on Talira 4 was led by the Taliran Liberation Front, TLF, a group of locals tired of the consensus's control over their planet's resources. They had taken refuge in the dense Lyrak forests, where AI drones struggled to track them. The Hawthorne landed near the forest's edge, its hull camouflaged to blend with the surroundings. Rosa and her team deployed in light combat armor, their boots crunching against the undergrowth as they moved into the jungle. Drones had detected a TLF camp several kilometers ahead. "You sure about this plan?" Nate grumbled, hefting his plasma rifle. "Would you rather let the AIs handle it?" Rosa replied. "We'll hit them fast, grab a prisoner, and figure out their next move." Ravi chimed in. "And if things go south, we've got Plan B." He patted the explosives strapped to his chest. As they approached the camp, Sienna hacked into nearby AI surveillance systems, creating false sensor readings to mask their approach. The humans moved with practiced precision, blending with the shadows. The camp came into view. A cluster of makeshift shelters surrounded by guards armed with salvaged plasma weapons. Rosa signaled her team to hold position. Then, in unison, they struck. Plasma fire erupted as Nate and Rosa took down guards with pinpoint accuracy. Ravi lobbed a flash grenade into the center of the camp, disorienting the rebels. Within minutes, the TLF fighters were subdued. Rosa's team had their prisoner, a rebel officer who had access to the TLF's communication network. Back aboard the Hawthorne, Sienna hacked into the prisoner's neural implant, extracting encrypted messages and data on the TLF's operations. The rebels' movements were erratic, their strategy unconventional, but Rosa saw a pattern in the chaos. "They're not trying to win," she said, studying the data. "They're trying to keep the consensus off balance. It's a war of attrition." "That's not a bad strategy," Nate remarked. "The AIs hate unpredictability." "Which means we need to out-chaos them," Rosa replied, a dangerous glint in her eye. "Time to hit them where it hurts." The next phase of the operation was pure human ingenuity. Rosa's team infiltrated rebel supply lines, planting trackers on their cargo ships and rerouting deliveries to starving cities. Ravi rigged explosives in abandoned warehouses, creating diversions that forced the rebels to waste resources. But the most devastating blow came when Sienna hacked the TLF's propaganda network. She broadcast fake messages, sowing doubt among the rebels about their leadership. Some TLF factions turned on each other, believing their commanders were selling them out. The rebels retaliated, escalating their attacks, but every move they made played into the humans' hands. Rosa's team predicted their responses and struck preemptively, cutting off escape routes and destroying key assets. The war devolved into chaos, but it was chaos Rosa controlled. The Telleran Liberation Front, TLF, was no ordinary rebellion. Their strength lay not in numbers or technology, but in their unpredictability. The AIs were designed to thrive in scenarios of order, but the TLF thrived in the opposite. They operated as fragmented cells, shifting strategies daily, making it nearly impossible for the consensus to anticipate their movements. For 2 years, the TLF had exploited this unpredictability to cripple the planet's infrastructure. But now, they faced something far worse than the consensus: humans. Rosa Delgado leaned over the holographic display in the Hawthorne's operations bay, where her team had gathered to review the data extracted from the captured rebel officer. Sienna, their hacker, gestured at a chaotic web of supply routes, sabotage points, and encrypted messages projected in the air. "They've got this down to a science," Sienna said, shaking her head. "They're using their own people as decoys to bait the consensus drones away from actual targets. It's brilliant, in a brutal sort of way." Rosa squinted at the hologram. "That's because they're betting on the AIs playing fair, but we're not AIs." Nate leaned back against the bulkhead, arms crossed. "So what's the play? You know how I feel about drawn-out cat-and-mouse games." "We break their system," Rosa said with a sly grin. "Introduce a little chaos of our own. Sienna, start spoofing their comms. I want you spreading disinformation, fake targets, false victories, made-up betrayals. Ravi, you're setting up traps along their supply routes. If they're relying on decoys, we'll make them pay for everyone they send out. And Nate?" Nate raised an eyebrow. "You're leading a raid on their forward command post. Let's see how they function without their leadership." The Telleran Liberation Front, TLF, was no ordinary rebellion. Their strength lay not in numbers or technology, but in their unpredictability. The AIs were designed to thrive in scenarios of order, but the TLF thrived in the opposite. They operated as fragmented cells, shifting strategies daily, making it nearly impossible for the consensus to anticipate their movements. For 2 years, the TLF had exploited this unpredictability to cripple the planet's infrastructure. But now, they faced something far worse than the consensus: humans. Rosa Delgado leaned over the holographic display in the Hawthorne's operations bay, where her team had gathered to review the data extracted from the captured rebel officer. Sienna, their hacker, gestured at a chaotic web of supply routes, sabotage points, and encrypted messages projected in the air. "They've got this down to a science," Sienna said, shaking her head. "They're using their own people as decoys to bait the consensus drones away from actual targets. It's brilliant, in a brutal sort of way." Rosa squinted at the hologram. "That's because they're betting on the AIs playing fair. But we're not AIs." Nate leaned back against the bulkhead, arms crossed. "So what's the play? You know how I feel about drawn-out cat-and-mouse games." "We break their system," Rosa said with a sly grin. "Introduce a little chaos of our own. Sienna, start spoofing their comms. I want you spreading disinformation, fake targets, false victories, made-up betrayals. Ravi, you're setting up traps along their supply routes. If they're relying on decoys, we'll make them pay for everyone they send out. And Nate?" Nate raised an eyebrow. "You're leading a raid on their forward command post. Let's see how they function without their leadership." The TLF relied on a network of hidden supply depots scattered across Talirafu's wilderness. Food, weapons, and medical supplies were shuttled to the front lines, using small, untraceable convoys. Sienna's first move was to hack the TLF's comms and insert false orders into their system. "Convoy ETA 10 minutes, Sienna muttered, her fingers dancing over the console. "They think they're sending reinforcements to their northern front." In reality, the convoy was driving straight into one of Ravi's traps. Positioned along the convoy's route, Ravi crouched behind a boulder, his thermal suit blending into the rocky terrain. His demolitions kit was spread out before him, a meticulous array of shaped charges and proximity sensors. "Charges set," Ravi reported over the comms. "Remember, no overkill," Rosa replied. "We need the supplies intact." Ravi snorted. "Fine, but I'm not leaving without a little boom." As the convoy rolled into view, Ravi triggered the first charge. The lead vehicle exploded in a controlled blast, flipping onto its side and blocking the narrow pass. The remaining vehicles screeched to a halt, and rebel soldiers scrambled out, weapons raised. That was their mistake. Nate and a squad of drones emerged from the nearby ravine, taking the rebels by surprise. Plasma fire lit up the night, and within minutes, the TLF convoy was in ruins. The supplies were intact, loaded onto the Hawthorne for the consensus forces to redistribute. The second phase of Rosa's plan was psychological warfare. Using the data Sienna had pulled from the rebel officer's neural implant, the team had access to the TLF's internal communications and a trove of encrypted messages. Sienna grinned as she intercepted a particularly juicy conversation between two TLF commanders. "Oh, this is going to be fun," she said, typing furiously. She altered the messages, fabricating accusations of betrayal. By the time the commanders realized something was wrong, their respective units were already at each other's throats. In one instance, a rebel platoon abandoned their post after receiving a falsified order, claiming their base had been compromised. When they returned, they found it under siege, not by the consensus, but by another rebel cell that believed the base had defected. "Rosa, you're not just breaking their system," Nate remarked as they watched the chaos unfold on a holographic display. "You're turning it inside out." "That's the point," Rosa replied. "The TLF's strength is their cohesion. Take that away and they fall apart." While the rebels were distracted by misinformation and sabotage, Nate led a team to strike at the TLF's forward command post, hidden deep in the Lirak forests. This was no ordinary assault. It was a precision operation designed to dismantle the TLF's leadership without drawing unnecessary attention. Nate and his team moved through the jungle like wraiths, their adaptive camo suits rendering them nearly invisible. Using intel from Sienna, they bypassed patrols and security drones to reach the command bunker. Inside, the TLF commanders were in disarray, their strategy meetings interrupted by reports of decimated supply lines and infighting among their own forces. "Now or never," Nate whispered. The team breached the bunker's perimeter, neutralizing guards with silenced plasma rifles. Nate led the charge into the control room, where the TLF commanders scrambled for cover. "This is for the supply convoy," Nate muttered, firing a stun round into the lead commander. Within minutes, the bunker was under human control, The TLF's chain of command was in shambles. Over the following weeks, the TLF began to crumble. With their supply lines compromised, their leadership in disarray, and their soldiers turning on each other, the rebellion lost its edge. The consensus forces, bolstered by the supplies recovered by the Hawthorne, swept through the remaining rebel strongholds with ease. Watching the final stages of the operation from the Hawthorne's bridge, Rosa allowed herself a rare moment of satisfaction. "They relied on chaos to win," she said. "They didn't count on us being better at it." The TLF's leader, a charismatic figure named Lyrak, made a desperate gamble. He gathered his remaining forces and launched an all-out assault on Telirafi's capital city, hoping to break the consensus's grip once and for all. The city became a war zone. TLF fighters clashed with AI drones in the streets, while terrified civilians fled for their lives. Amid the carnage, Rosa's team moved with surgical precision. "Ravi, set the charges on the eastern barricade," Rosa ordered. "Nate, cover the west flank." Explosions rocked the city as Ravi's charges detonated, cutting off rebel reinforcements. Nate's rifle barked as he held the line, buying time for the consensus forces to regroup. Rosa confronted Lyrak in the city's central plaza. Their battle was fierce, plasma bolts scorching the air as they traded fire, but Rosa's experience won out. She disarmed Lyrak and delivered him to the consensus authorities. With Lyrak captured and the rebellion crushed, Telirafi was back under consensus control. The AI overseers hailed the humans' success, their cold logic acknowledging the effectiveness of Rosa's methods. Query: "Final report on human contribution," Omega-12 said. Rosa smirked. "The job's done. You'll get the invoice." The team returned to the Hawthorne, weary but victorious. Yet, as they left Telirafi behind, Rosa couldn't shake a lingering unease. "Do you ever wonder," Nate asked, "if we're just fixing problems the AIs create?" Rosa sighed. "Maybe. But as long as they keep paying, we'll keep fixing." The galaxy learned a valuable lesson from the Telirafi campaign. Humanity's strength wasn't in its technology or numbers. It was in its ability to adapt, to improvise, and to thrive in chaos. The ascendant AI consensus, for all its logic and power, couldn't understand one simple truth: you can't outsmart the human factor.